Hello, welcome back to the Ottr Culture Podcast. This week we have none other than Swindon Wildcats number 28, Stevie Whitfield, on the podcast. Ben, how was it for you?
It was a great podcast. Great to dive into mental health a bit more. Me and Stevie both shared our experiences with anxiety, panic attacks. It was quite eye-opening to see someone who's obviously a bit of a... I think you have to be a bit nuts to play ice hockey. Nice to see a guy that tough talk about something that hard. It's
interesting that Stevie has opened up He's opened up quite a lot on the podcast here.
Yeah.
Didn't expect it at all, but it's a really great episode. I think you're going to enjoy it. So please plug in, turn on, and enjoy. So we're back. This is episode 3 of the Ottr Culture Podcast. Except this time we have none other than Stevie Whitfield on the podcast, and Ben's joined us for this one.
Hello.
How is it?
It's good. I can't remember the last time we had a beer on a podcast.
Wow, it has been a while. Stevie, how are you?
I'm really well.
Well, I know you through years of hockey. Ben knows you through several beering sessions.
Mm-hmm.
But to those that don't know you, who are you?
I'm Stevie Whitfield. People might know me from playing ice hockey for the Swindon Wildcats.
Yeah.
That's probably, if anyone knows me, that's it.
How long have you been playing hockey for?
20 years, something like that, from, like yourself, young age, and then played for Swindon now. I think I'm in my 12th season.
Jeez. Has it always been Swindon as well?
Always Swindon, yeah.
Never anyone else?
No.
It's quite a physical game.
It is.
How is it as a man, having to turn up to a game every single week, getting battered about? Is your body bruised and battered most games?
I'd say it's got less physical the older I've got. Well, it's just as physical, but it's a lot less violent, I'd say. I think when I was younger and broke into the Wildcats, sort of the level I play at now, games were quite violent. Whereas now it's, with everything, everyone's more aware of head trauma and all these things. So the game's developed and they've tried to, it's trickled down from the top level in the world. We're more aware of the damage we're doing to ourselves. So they try to limit that damage if they can.
Yeah.
But still maintain a fast-paced physical game that people want to watch.
Yeah. When did you your break into the main Wildcats team? You were playing ENL for quite a few years just before that, weren't you? I remember playing beside you in the ENL, and then you started playing a lot for the Wildcats, and then it was straight into it.
Dan tried to turn it about him, I think.
My fail career.
So I played in the ENL for, I think it would have been 4 years, for about 8. Maybe, about 4 years. So I was 16, still in junior, played a bit then, and then full-time, maybe 2 years. I was about 20, 21 when I broke into the senior team. And so it would have been 2 years, full-time ENL.
What was the transition like, going from being a younger player in such a man's team, like a man's strong team?
I suppose. I mean, the first bit of it is they sort of say, "Oh, you have some ability to play," and then it comes down to you need to physically be a bit bigger just to handle the workload of playing. So that was the main transition, and also just the number of games. I think now you play. I should say NIHL too. You play about 25 games a year, and I think last year we played about 70. So it's a big workload, but it's not similar to other sports where I think you need more time to recover. So roughly on a game day, I'll play anywhere between 18 and 25 minutes of actual on-ice time. Mm-hmm. So the recovery is easier. But again, it's just, a case of sort of, as you get older, you just get used to it and you recover where you can.
Did you guys play together?
We did.
Yeah. What was Dan like on the ice?
Dan was good.
Yeah?
Dan was good.
Wow. Wobbly?
No, not wobbly at all. I'd say that. I don't think I made him look good either. It was, but we played defense together.
Yeah, I remember vividly. I think I was coming up maybe under 18, so still in a cage, still one of the younger people on the team. And Stevie was you were pretty senior in the ENL team back then.
Well, yeah, that was weird because we had a group that sort of broke through all together. We were all about 18. None of us. Well, I think Kieran Long obviously went off and did his thing, but most of us were sort of at a level where we were going to play that for a little bit at least.
Yeah.
And but being a two years in the ENL kind of makes you a veteran because no one stays in that team that long really. Mm-hmm. There's a few who have like Will and Sully, but yeah, normally if you're in that team for more than 2 years, you're pretty experienced.
And I remember going to an Isle of Wight game and getting on the bus, being a young guy, and everyone around me was playing cards, and you were betting. Pretty good. Well, back then it felt like a lot of money. I remember £20 notes being flashed about.
I know.
As a junior, I was like, "What? These guys?
That's a lot of money now." Yeah. No, if it was a weird mix because you had, you had older guys like Goffer, who's, at the time, 20 quid wouldn't have been anything. But I remember if you won, you were like, "Oh my god, I'm loaded! Like, what a week I'm gonna have."
Yeah.
And we used to play, a lot of cards, and it was just a good time. Like, we had a lot of friends in the team, and we just, a lot of cards and nights out. I remember. Can we talk about that night? This is we're going to show our age a bit, I guess, but this was Walkabout, I think it would have been.
Yeah.
Christ. That's a long time ago.
It was my 17th birthday, I'm pretty sure.
Wow.
After a game in Oxford.
17th birthday, and I don't know whose idea it was, but I won't incriminate them. But we got someone's ID, and Dan went out, and it was...
Nice.
Pretended to be like 26, got away with it, obviously.
Yeah.
Looking old at 17 years old.
I think you looked older then than you do now.
Yeah, in Walkabout. And that was about the only bar in Swindon that was playing Arctic Monkeys. I just remember that. That was amazing.
It was a good mix. I liked Walkabout.
Yeah. Did you ever go there?
Never went. Nah, my first one was Bushwhackers, and I basically edited my own passport.
What?
I got a girl from college to photocopy a 0 from my passport and put it on the 4 at the end of my birth year.
Wow.
So I was 21. It made me 21 when I was 17, and then I remember the bouncer asked me for my ID, and I gave him my passport, and I'd been going over my new date of birth in my head consistently for ages. And he's like, "When's your birthday?" I was like, 23rd of March. I just fucking panicked and said 00. And he's like, "Yeah, go ahead, mate." And I was like, sorted.
Wow. What was it like going into the changing room? Because I remember like the pressures of being in a changing room full of what felt like, what is more experienced players. Did you ever get nervous when you kind of was going into a changing room full of players that you kind of not looked up to, but were at the next level?
Yeah, I'd say looked up to. I mean, I was weird when I was younger. I think some people when they're young, they're like, "Oh, I want to play in the NHL and all these things." I was quite young when I wanted to play for the Swindon Wildcats, or, I mean, then they would have been the Chill, maybe the Lynx, whatever. I was like, I wanted to do that when I was older. And then, you go into a room and there are people there who've obviously been there a long time. I think at the time, Lee Brathwaite would have been there, Fidzy, it was sort of, again, a group that broke through together. So it was quite I wouldn't say intimidating, because they'd obviously try and welcome you in. But I think the other thing that's different, I suppose, when you go into that, and it is so many games, the professionalism shows in a different way that you can't be affected by results as much as we were. So we weren't, if you won a game, you weren't going to walk about with Dan and a fake ID. You just go on to the next one every time. And that's still the same now. I think that's probably the biggest difference. If someone who watches the games, they'd probably be quite surprised at how relaxed the room is before a game, in between periods. It's not, it's not sort of rah-rah. It's just, we know what we need to do and we carry on. So I think that took a bit of getting used to. But once you get used to that, it's quite an easy transition to make.
Yeah. How about making mistakes? I remember in training sessions, if you didn't take a pass right, or you did something a little bit wrong, you'd play with that in your own head. Did you ever get that?
Yeah, definitely. I think I've heard it say, I don't know whether this is saying or not, but you have to build up money in the bank to make mistakes in games. So if I play defense, Dan played defense as well. I'd hate to be a goalkeeper, because you make a mistake, it's a goal.
Yeah.
If you make one in defense, it's possibly a goal. Hopefully not, but sometimes it is. So sort of over time, you have to build up good performances, and then when you do make a mistake, you just have to shrug it off and get on with it. And and then in train, I mean, I know what it's like when someone young goes on training and the puck turns into a grenade every time they touch it. It's that's just something that happens, and then eventually you calm down and you find your level and you can get on with it.
I've got a 2-game track record with the Wildcats. I made it to the Wildcats for 2 games. In the first game, I went out, my first shift. Oldie was coaching. I went out and kneed someone, got a penalty. They scored on the penalty. And then I tripped all the way up to Sheffield for my second game. I only got 1 shift in the first, went to Sheffield. I got another penalty and they scored on that one. I played 2 games, 2 penalties, and they scored twice against us.
And they're like, "I'm not putting him back on the ice again."
Oh, man. I must have fell over so many times as well. I'm pretty sure I fell over in the warm-up on that too. Like, bad fallovers.
For someone who doesn't play ice hockey, it's like I look at it and I think it's such a high skill cap, because you have to play hockey and then you have to ice skate at the same time. It's like you're adding two very difficult things with no skill together.
I struggle with the skating mainly.
Yeah.
I think it shows like most people, even like we play a relatively low level of ice hockey. It's, the British League, the Elite League's built up a bit, but the level we play it's relatively low. But everyone who plays started when they were, below 10.
Yeah.
And you have to have that skating ability to even think about playing. So, yeah, you have to be able to skate to a certain level, and then you don't really think about it anymore. It just happens.
It's like walking.
Yeah, it's like running or football. You're just running, but you're skating, and it's you have to have that. Otherwise, you're going to get 2 penalties and not play again.
I remember we used to do a couple of films for the Wildcats. We used to film some of the games. And I remember I used to really just hold out for the fights. We never really saw any big fights, I don't think. Not at a Wildcat game.
Did they happen as much? They don't really happen as much anymore, right?
Not as common as they used to be. Used to be like one a game, maybe, I think, when I started.
Really?
And now it's... there's... particularly our team, I think guys are a bit older. They're older, and they've done the fighting, and then you're just intimidating to other people without really having to do it anymore. But it's definitely less common than it used to be, and I don't know whether that's sort of the game's changed a bit, so you can't carry a guy who is just going to fight. You all have to be able to play. So that happened before I broke in, really. So everyone who fights now, they're good players, and then you can't have someone who's just going to fight anymore, and that was something that people did.
Like Goon.
Yeah. Essentially, you'd have a team. There would always be one tough guy in a team who would literally be there to look after other people. If shit went wrong, they would. That was their job.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, it just can't happen anymore because I think everyone has to be contributing something other than that.
When was the last time you had a fight on the ice? Do you remember?
Oh, I don't fight.
Never.
So, I've had scuffles. I wouldn't say I've ever had a fight. It's not fake, so
yeah,
I wouldn't really volunteer to get punched in the face.
That's logical, yeah.
And I don't think I'd be very good at it. And I think if you don't do it, there's things you can't do while you play. If there's certain things where you might not have to fight, because I don't think anyone has to fight anymore. But if you're gonna hit someone from behind, you're running around slashing someone or whatever,
expect to fight.
You'd be expected to respond. So you kind of just have to play clean and be very respectful to everyone. Hopefully they don't fight you.
You said that they don't fight as much anymore. Does that mean the refs don't let them fight much as well? Then do the refs call it off?
I think it's more of a. I don't think the sort of penalties for it have changed too much. I'm pretty sure it's still a 2+2, or it might be 5 minutes.
Yeah.
It's more of a sort of cultural change within the game where it's not as common
for safety.
I think that's probably one of the main things, because it's they've done a lot for sort of taking away head contact, so hits to the head get penalised more heavily, and hits from behind get penalised more heavily, so you're avoiding damage to the neck and the head. And then at the same time, there's this sort of weird thing where you're like, we're going to do everything we can to stop this, but we'll still allow people to have bare knuckle fights. So so I think just that sort of change between the sort of rules and the culture has changed. And that means it's way less common.
Yeah, that was the weirdest thing about watching my first game, is the fact 2 guys had a fight and the refs are just skating around them. Yeah. I'm thinking, what the fuck is going on? Why aren't they stopping the fight? And then you were like, oh no, it happens all the time. It's part of the game. And I'm thinking, what?
Yeah. I don't know whether what it is. I think it's something to do with just the safety of the ref as well. So they always say, if it goes to ground, they can break it up. Yeah. And they normally would. And 2 guys who are fighting, if it goes to ground, they would stop.
Yeah.
And I mean, as a ref, you don't want to get involved when there's punches being thrown and arms going everywhere.
I think
for your safety.
For your safety and also the safety of the player. Because if you go in too early, I mean, it's a difficult job to break up a fight between 2 people. Because if you go too early and you grab someone's arms and the other person hasn't stopped, you're not just endangering yourself, but you're also endangering the person
because they can't defend themselves.
Because they can't defend themselves anymore. Yeah. So I think I've seen it where it's clear that one person isn't willing to fight, and in that case the ref will they'll come in a bit earlier. But if it's 2 people are willing, they normally they'll throw punches until I mean, it's very tiring not from experience, but from what I'm told. Yeah.
Have you seen what results have you seen from a fight? Have you seen some bad injuries from it? What's the worst injury you've seen on the ice?
The worst?
I had that question lined up.
Did you?
Yeah.
I knew it was a Ben Lawton question coming in.
I think the worst one I saw was, so we were playing in Sheffield, and Aaron, who's our coach, has gone in for a puck, and I think the guy tried to stick lift him, and he's missed him, and he is just really cranked upwards that way, and he had a cut from sort of his nose down that, that crease there. I don't know what it's called.
Under your cheekbone.
Yeah, kind of under your cheekbone, but it was fully through and through.
Fuck.
So that was a bad one. That's probably the worst I've seen. I've seen like people get broke. I think Betsy broke his knee one year, but you just didn't know what it was until after. So cuts tend to be the worst you see because it's so apparent what it is. It's
such a huge investment, really. Like this, you're investing your body into a sport. I mean, quite a few guys in the sport as well, or in your team, still have a normal job too, right?
Yeah, I'd say the majority.
So a lot of people work alongside playing hockey. So they're playing hockey on a weekend, potentially putting themselves in a fighting situation, getting fucked up, and then going back to work on the Monday. That's quite a commitment.
Yeah, I think so. But they kind of you can kind of it's not that common to have that bad an injury. I'd say. I mean, touch wood, I haven't had any really bad cuts that I thought I can't go to work. But yeah, you have to sort of balance it between the two. And I think that's what happens when someone gets older, is that balance changes. So from maybe like 20, your prime, I'd say 20 to 27, 28, hockey's probably your main thing and you work alongside it. And then at a certain point that kind of flips and, you think, I need to get work together because I'm not going to be doing this forever. And at that point, that's when you probably become more aware of it. But it isn't, I wouldn't say the injuries are super common. Yeah. It's relatively safe within reason.
It's also the commitment. The one thing that I found when playing hockey, and that was just before we kind of started Ottr, was the commitment to it every single weekend and the training within the evenings. And it was like we were growing a business or just starting out a business. I was right, I either have to commit myself to hockey, and like back then it was a hobby that I was paying to do, or like commit to this. And obviously I'm glad that I did this because it meant that we could grow this, and I'm now at a stage where I can go back to hockey if I wanted. But how have you found that as like a commitment that you lose every single weekend within a season?
Yeah, I mean, up until about 25, I didn't really think about that. It was always, I worked alongside playing hockey, and hockey's what I wanted to do. I never wanted to do anything else, so it wasn't much of a sacrifice. And then I think, as you get older, that balance, you have more going on in your home life and your work life as well. And it's a trade-off because, I would say, I would have started a business or whatever because I probably wasn't passionate enough about that. I was passionate about hockey, so that's what I did. But, it is definitely a sort of, you sacrifice quite a lot of things during the season to be able to perform at a level that you need to. And I think, it's easy to do if you're passionate about it, and that's one of the good things about the level we play at is, I don't think it would be a secret to say no one's getting paid like life-changing money, or even, a lot of guys work. So if you're doing it, you are passionate about it and you love doing it. So everyone's in the same boat, and I mean, I think it makes for a good league and a good team when you get a group of guys that just want to be there. You never have someone there who's just taking a paycheck because. Why would you? Yeah,
exactly. That makes sense. That's cool.
What about the? Do you ever feel pressure from the fans? Do you ever feel pressure from like external sources?
You can do. I think you normally, not necessarily from the fans, but if there is pressure from the fans, it would kind of get to you through the coach or through management because they're really dealing with are we getting enough bums on seats, and that's ultimately. The business side of it is if we're not performing and it's so bad that people don't want to come watch, then it's bad for business. So I think you can get that sort of pressure and you can feel it. We've been relatively successful over the last sort of 3 or 4 years. So the margin for error is a lot smaller than it used to be. I mean, we can lose 2 games in a row now and it's you can feel a bit of pressure. We need to get a performance and win. Whereas it used to be when I first broke in, we were much further down the table. As long as you were sort of playing well at home and competing, that was normally enough to keep people happy.
Mm-hmm.
So it kind of changes, but I wouldn't say I feel it personally from fans. And the thing is, everyone wants the same thing. I'm much happier when we win or we're doing well. And obviously, I'd imagine the fans are much happier when that's happening too.
Yeah. It definitely must affect the changing room too, like the mentality of the team.
Yeah, I suppose so. I think because you're down the rink all the time, so it's when you're in a bad run, the rink's not as pleasant a place to be.
Yeah,
and that's one of the difficulties, and you try not to affect your. And then the other thing is just like, if you're losing, you're in a bad mood for the week sometimes. I'm better with it now than I used to be.
Yeah.
When I was younger, it was like you'd be in a bad mood all week if you lost. That's changed now.
You don't hold on to it as much.
It's not a case of not caring, but you can sort of compartmentalize it a bit better.
Yeah. And when it comes to, about the whole essence of why we're doing this podcast is about the mental health of men and how, it's a common said thing that men don't openly talk about their mental health and how they feel and their feelings. When it comes to a group of 22 guys in the changing room, would you say ice hockey is a sport where you do talk about that, or is it still is there still a stigma around that within this sport? Is it something that is changing? Because I don't know. I mean, it's probably like it for loads of groups of men.
Yeah, I mean, it's very difficult for me to talk about is ice hockey and comparatively because I haven't played anything else at a high enough level to know. Yeah, I think if you have a group of 20, 25 men and you're all sort of, you're 18 to 35, 40, we know that that's the main issue that you're going to face in your health life at that time, probably. That's the odds of what's going to happen. So I don't know. I would say when I've gone through stuff like that, I've never really lent on hockey as much. Not because I don't know. I think you see it more as not as coldly as a job. But I think part of, you might get this as well, Dan, is that with hockey it's very much you don't want to be a weak part of the team. And you sort of reckon it, if you feel that you're having a mental health issue or you're having any sort of issue you're having is affecting your performance, I wouldn't say you'd hide it, but you kind of want to be able to sort of separate the rink from that, so you can go in, do your job, and then come away. And that's not necessarily a great environment to be able to talk openly about things. And I think in my case, if it ever has happened, I would be more likely to lean on family and friends than hockey. I don't think it's necessary that hockey is a bad environment for it. I'm sure if I went to someone from that part of my life, I'm sure I'd get great support. But it's just, I think it's more something that you within yourself that you think, no, I can't do that because it will affect the way I'm looked at in the team, possibly. Yeah,
it does make sense about being like a weak part. Well, in your own head, you start to think, I don't want to share this. Like, I mean, I think we're all pretty open here, would you say? But like, there's probably been times when I've like not felt great, and I'm like, well, if we're on a big shoot or something like that, and I'm like, I'm feeling very fucking stressed right now, but I'm not going to share that with the team because I don't want to get them as stressed as I am, because then we're all going to be in a right mess. So it's like, I guess
just turn around and be like, I'm fucking stressed.
I'm just going to hold this in instead. It's a weird time.
It's true though. Like the whole. This is like the catch. It's a double-edged sword of mental health. I think sometimes it's like when I've suffered with anxiety in the past, it's always been like, it's scary having anxiety, and the first time I experienced it, it was really fucking scary because I didn't know what it was. But the superpower that I found within it was opening up. Yeah. As soon as I started chatting to anyone about it, it chinked away at its armor.
So what did your anxiety sort of present symptoms wise?
I woke up about 6 a.m. and I thought I was having a heart attack. Yeah. My chest was going. I had no idea what was going on. I wouldn't really say there was anything too stressful going on in my life. Even today, I can't think of any significant thing that happened that triggered it. Wow. Drove myself to the hospital in a Toyota Aygo, pretty much going through red lights. I mean, I don't know how, but I managed to speed in that car. Got to the hospital, and they were like, I went to A&E, and I was like, I think I'm having a heart attack. I need to see someone. They were like, okay, love, go sit down. I'm thinking in my head, go fucking sit down. I'm having a fucking heart attack.
Was your heart beating low?
You can literally hear your heartbeat. It's all like it's all you can think about. And I'm like, obviously, it wasn't a heart attack. I was having a panic attack. Yeah. I think I collapsed on the floor in the waiting room. probably half like dramatized it so I could get seen and half legit.
Yeah.
And then they came in, they measured my heart and stuff, checked what was going on, and they kind of calmed me down. And then they said it was an anxiety attack or a panic attack. And after that, I was a bit like, okay, well, I don't know. That was like, if anything, that was worse, because if I had a heart attack, it might have been like, all right, Ben, stop eating shit.
Yeah.
Stop drinking. You know, you can fix that. You can identify what the problem is. But because it was panic and it was anxiety, I was like, what do I do with this information? What am I supposed to change in my life to fix this or to make sure it doesn't happen again?
Yeah, that's the toughest thing, I think. So mine is panic attacks as well. I've had them sporadically since I was young. I can remember having them, and I think it becomes a case for me. It's always just been a case of management rather than some sort of cure. And then, I mean, we'll probably talk about it later, but there was one point where I would say I didn't manage it, and then it just got worse and worse. So I don't know, do you find you have them often, or is it just sort of out the blue?
I'd say now I fully understand what it is and what causes it and what maybe the triggers are. I have a lot more control over it. To the point I'd never say, for a long time I thought I had cured myself of depression, of anxiety, I suppose you could say, but that's not the case. And I remember I flew to Iceland. Well, after that incident, I started having like anxiety where I became aware of my breathing, and it's something called conscious breathing around anxiety. And I couldn't not think about breath, to the point where like, if my mentality was, if you forget to breathe out, you're gonna die, and therefore I'm like constantly, I'm thinking about breathing. It's all I can think about.
I remember we were at desk and you came in and said, Dan, I'm gonna have to go home early because I literally can't focus. I can't help but think about my breathing. Yeah. And I was like sat there like, we were pretty young, and I was just like sat there like, the fuck is he talking about? Yeah. What do you mean?
Is he on acid?
And then Kez was like really empathetic, and she knew exactly where you're coming from. But I was like, what the hell is like this anxiety thing you're talking about? Why are you talking about your breathing? But yeah.
And that's the other thing, is that, I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know like how common it was, and there's different triggers for different people. And this went on for months and months and months, and I kind of like, I went through ifs and buts about it. I never really got to a point where I was going to have a panic attack like that first time. Then I caught a flight to Iceland, and had a panic attack on takeoff. And luckily this woman next to me, she managed to calm me down. Yeah. But I remember thinking, fuck, that was terrifying, because you're in a plane. And then after that, planes became triggers for me.
Yeah, I found that driving in traffic, planes, anything where it's sort of, because once you get into that state of you're having a panic attack, I would say if you had one before where you felt it coming on, and you've maybe been able to prevent it going full blown, because there's nothing quite like that when you've been having them. So I had them for a little while, and I remember the first time I thought, oh no, because I think part of them becomes the anticipation of it. Yeah, because I got to a point at one point where I was night was difficult, because I would just know it was coming. It was
I had the same.
I was roughly one a night, but once the first time you have one, and have one coming on, and then you control. I wouldn't say control, but you prevent it going, driving to the hospital with it. You sort of calm down yourself. You think, oh, I've done it. And that was probably the change from being able to manage them. Because sporadically, I still have times where it comes on, and then it's, I found breathing exercises help, where it's like, I can't even remember which ones they were. I spoke to a woman from the NHS on the phone at the time. And it was to do with like you were sort of counting your breathing, and it was like 2 quick breaths in, deep exhale out, and you do that maybe 10 times, and then it was just deep breaths through your nose. Yeah, and that would, and I don't know how it works, but it works for me.
It does. It's only, I had one about, I guess, July time. I felt one coming on, really ironically, I guess, because I got to a point where I felt pretty comfortable with it now, and that I could remove all my, if I felt one coming on 99% of the time, I could control it. And then I was about to go to bed with Amber, and I think she said something funny, and I laughed so hard that I winded myself, and then I had to catch my breath after I laughed. But then we went to bed, and the whole night I was up awake trying to catch my breath. I couldn't catch it again, and I went back into that state of like conscious breathing again. So then I had to have a bath for like 4 a.m, managed to calm down. It was crazy. And I thought, fucking hell, it's back again. Just as you think you're kind of over it, it grasps you around the neck again. And then on the way back from Dublin on our stag do, I felt in the airport, probably there's a lot to do with the anxiety as well about being hungover as fuck.
Yeah.
Because they don't mix well, anxiety and hangovers. I remember coming back on from Dublin, and I said to Dan, do you mind swapping with me? Because I had a middle seat and Dan had an aisle seat, and I was like, I know if I have an aisle seat, I can get through it. But if I'm sat in the middle between two people, it's just going to make the whole thing.
It's not even that you need to get up and walk around, but it's just being able to.
It's the option.
Sometimes. Yeah,
totally.
It's strange.
Totally, yeah. And then it's just been, I find for me, it's distraction, some music. If I can listen to music, any sort of music that can help take me out of it, that works. And there's strategies around, like, look at two things you can see, something you can smell, something you can hear.
Yeah, they talk about grounding yourself. I've heard that before as well. So can help some people.
The thing is, though, I'm really glad that I went through it, and I'm really glad that I still have those experiences, because it makes me so much more aware about mental health, but more so like when you describe the issues you had with it, it's so much I can really understand what you went through and how fucking terrifying it is.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing that's difficult to explain to someone who doesn't suffer from panic attacks or hasn't been around someone that does. It is like you said, it's like, oh, I'm dying, basically. Yeah. I mean, that is it. It's like, oh, I'm dying, and it becomes so difficult to, once that thought enters your head, then it's like, oh, this is going to be very difficult to manage. So there's different ways that I'm sure for different people it's different how you cope with them. Mine was I normally phone someone if I'm on my own. Yeah. So I'd be either ringing Millie or my mum, just someone, and talk to them, and that would help me get out of it. And then breathing exercises, really. What's
like the feeling? Is it kind of like heart? Is it kind of heart palpitation? You feel like your heart rushes a little bit more and you get like a bit tingly, or like what? How does that feel?
Yeah, imagine the feeling when you jump into really cold water and your chest tightens up.
Oh, right.
It tightens up, and no matter what you do, you can't seem to untighten it. Yeah. And then for every breath you take, it feels tighter and tighter, and you get more shortness of breath.
And have you ever had the sort of pins and needles in your hands and feet?
So there's a lot of different feelings for a lot of different people, right? I guess that's the thing as well. Not everyone has the exact same feeling.
No, definitely not. And I don't know whether it's because I have some sort of hypochondriac sort of tendency, which I don't think I do, but with panic attacks I definitely do, because I instantly feel I'm having a heart attack, that's it.
Yeah.
And then, because your arm gets tingly. It's both arms, but obviously you think, oh, my left arm's tingly.
Yeah.
My heart's pounding out my chest, and you're in fight or flight mode. So once it goes full blown, you can't sit down. You're just I shouldn't say when I have them.
Yeah.
So I think in our old house we had it sort of the front door. It was a long, thin terrace house. So when I was having them at night, I would just go downstairs and I'd walk from the back door to the front door to the back door to the front door.
Wow.
In my head, I'm thinking, right, when shall I call the ambulance? And then eventually it would always alleviate, and then it would come along again. And it's not ever knowing it's going away, because once you've had one, you recognize what's going on, and logically you can say, well, I was fine after last time.
Yeah.
But you still can't prevent yourself going to sort of that level of just,
and even now there's times where like I can feel it coming on, and I'm thinking I can control this. I know what to do, distract myself, come out of it. But that thing in the back of your head is always like, what if this one you can't? What if this one, like, you can't get rid of this one? You're going to have a panic attack. That is always there in the back of your head. But
yeah, I think that's a different. Once they become more regular, like I said, the anticipation of them almost comes as bad as actually going through them. Because then if it's at night time, I would normally be quite bad when I was going through it. So that would be like you'd wake up, you hadn't had much sleep, you go to work, and you get through the day. And then you're like, oh no, I've got to go home. And then because it's like there's this big spectre or whatever waiting for you when you get back, and it's going to happen again. And then it becomes almost self-fulfilling.
Yeah.
When do you remember your first one? Do you remember the first time? Because you said it's been happening for quite a while. Was there a period?
I used to have them. I think when I was really young, I used to think it was car sickness.
All right.
And I'm talking very young. Like I would have been like, my dad's driving me somewhere. I've been like I don't know, 4 or 5, 8, whatever. But I looking back on them, I think they probably were panic attacks because there wasn't much logic to them. I wasn't nauseous or anything like that, and from what I can remember, which is obviously not great, the symptoms were very similar. And then I mean, we got onto this, didn't we? Because we had do you remember? Was it Eriksson for Denmark?
The football player, he
football
faked
player.
it.
So
Yeah, it's a heart attack on the pitch.
I think he had a cardiac arrest on the pitch, and we were at the time around Millie's parents, weren't we? And that's kind of what got us on, me and Dan talking about us anyway, because I hadn't really told Dan about what I had. It would have been about 2018-ish. It got really bad, and yeah, talking about that, and it's strange how you become open about it and you can talk to anyone then, really. Yeah.
Did you find it hard talking to people does it almost feel like once you speak to someone about it, you feel a bit more comfortable speaking to other people? Or is it kind of, you feel like you have trust, not trust, but you kind of feel like you can relate to someone or you can talk to someone about that, but other people not so much? Did you find that?
I think the more you speak about it, the less of a grip it holds over you.
Yeah.
So the more people you talk about it to, the more. So I guess you could find someone you really trust, or a doctor or something like that, to begin with, and then over time, the more people you can tell. But the thing I think I spoke to Hannah Roke about it, and the one thing she said to me was that it's not a death sentence; it won't be forever. That really helped, because once you start experiencing them, you think, this is it now. This is my life forever, and that's horrible. And that makes it worse.
Yeah.
And then it was the whole. She said speak to people about it, because the more people you speak to, the less of a grip it has, and I found that really to be true, very true. So I think anyone I get a chance to speak to about it, I tell them about it.
Yeah. When we spoke about it in 2018 or whenever.
Oh, so
what stage?
No, that would have been later. I think so. The time I was talking to you about was I think about 2018.
Yeah.
And then I can't remember when we were speaking about. Well, it would have been the Euros or whatever it was. So not too long ago.
Did you have these panic attacks during hockey? Or were there times during sport?
See, the peak of, so basically what happened was, it was around that time, hockey was actually going quite successfully. So we, I think that year we won 2 trophies, which Swindon hadn't done before. So it's like things were good. And then, I don't think I'd ever describe as having a full-blown panic attack, but the difficulty became that at the time I'd been playing for quite a while, so I didn't really get overly nervous. Yeah. But we were playing in cup finals, so I was a little bit like, oh, this is something different. I've not done it before. Yeah. And nerves would kind of present themselves as they normally do, butterflies, or, your breathing's a bit different. And then that was a very similar symptom to a panic attack. And so I don't think I had a full-blown one, but I had in the final of I can't remember what cup it was, but we played Basingstoke, and I had a real hard time recovering my heart rate back down. So it's difficult to say whether I was in fight or flight, but I was sort of maybe presenting symptoms. But that was kind of like the real start of it. So actually, hockey didn't really, I wouldn't say I recovered, but by the time this was near the end of the year, and it started sort of happening more often than it had done ever before. And then the year finished, and we did well. I kind of look at it as I got away with it, because I was going through this at home, but I was okay to sort of muddle through. And then over that summer, it progressively got a bit worse until maybe June. And then I began to I think the first time, I went on sort of a lads' holiday to Budapest. We never did that when we were younger, so we thought, we'll all get together and go. Yeah. So that I went there, and I remember before I went, I'm not a great flyer, and before we went, I remember I went to my mum's house, and that was the first time I said, I said to her, I'm not sure I can go because I think something's wrong with me. And I remember that being a bit odd, because I was like, there wasn't something wrong with me, but there kind of was. And I have a great relationship with my parents, and she kind of, talking to her, made me feel better, and it kind of put a band-aid over it for a while. And she said, you should go, you'll enjoy it, just try and relax. So I went, and then I think we're in this great ruin bar, unbelievable place, Budapest, if you haven't been. And I had a full-blown panic attack. So it was a busy ruin bar, like drinking all the sort of can trigger it, I suppose. But so I went back to the hotel, tried to lie down, and the difficulty was I was sharing a room with like 4 other guys.
Yeah.
So you're trying not to be like ridiculous, so you're sort of led down, and I'm like my legs twitching and stuff like that. Like it's just weird. And then I think the next day I sort of thought, you know what, I do need to go home. Like it's just something's. I'll go. I need to go sort this out, really.
Yeah.
So Millie booked me a flight home on my own. I think it was all I can remember is I could only get into like Gatwick or something. My dad picked me up at about 3 a.m. Drove home. We were due to go on holiday. Actually, I was due to go Budapest and then 2 days back, and then we were going to Spain. And Millie, we didn't have much option, so thankfully Millie was okay with it. We ended up going down to Devon for a week, which we go to regular, and it's something you're familiar with.
Yeah.
And that really helped. I was probably at crisis point at that point, and then it kind of got me to a level where I could then go. I went and saw a GP. So for me, when I saw the GP, it was kind of dealing with the hypochondriac side of it. So it was a lot of checking everything's physically okay.
Yeah.
So I done that.
I had the same thing, yeah.
And then, so it's like, I had a echocardiogram, which is kind of like a, I mean, when they do the...
on the lungs.
Echocardiogram. What am I thinking of? Yeah, I think the echocardiogram is like they do with a baby. I don't know what it's called.
Yeah.
You know, when they do the, they look inside, so they check all the ventricles and
Okay.
everything's working. That came back fine. And then I think I wore a heart monitor for 24 hours.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow, okay.
Which actually coincided. So this was around the World Cup. So I watched England beat Colombia on penalties with a heart monitor. But the main reason I remember that is I remember going, like, just being socially awkward. I was like going in to give them the heart monitor back.
Yeah.
And I remember, like, the nurse was there not really talking to me, and I said, the results might not be great. I watched the penalties last night, and she just didn't buy any of it. She just looked at me quite coldly. I thought, all right.
Yeah.
Man.
But yeah.
So when you were in Budapest, were your friends aware of it then?
Not aware of it leading into going to Budapest.
Uh-huh.
And then that was the start of having conversations about it.
Yeah.
So it was kind of like a different group. So some people I was really close with, and then some people were sort of more acquaintances, friends, in that sort of sense. So with them, it was more sort of saying, something's not right. I just need to go home. Don't feel very well.
Yeah.
And then there was a few friends who were there. Like I think Cokes was there, APS.
Yeah.
Phil, Darren was there too, Fino, like people I've known for a long time, and I sort of told them what was going on.
Mm-hmm.
And first thing they said was just like, yeah, get out of here, just go, make sure you're okay. And that was it, really.
And how did you feel after the hospital appointments and the scans and the heart monitor and stuff? Did you feel more at ease then? Did you get the results that you kind of expected from that?
I don't know what I expected, to be honest. It was just, I was kind of still in a bit of a blur, so it was just kind of like, well, do this. I wouldn't say, I had that done and I felt instantly better. I suppose there is some sort of placebo effect of going to see someone about it, which always helps. So that would be my suggestion to anyone, is go speak to someone, speak to someone who you're comfortable to talk to.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, make sure you go see your GP or, walk in somewhere.
Yeah.
And once you get to that point and you're sort of you're beginning to manage it, I think that's the sort of start process.
Yeah.
And then from there, so from there it was kind of get the results back from that. So I didn't really know what they were going to say, because I was still having kind of like panic attacks on and off. But you think, they might just tell me, like in my head I was thinking, I might not be able to play hockey again, might have to change lifestyle completely, it might be something major. And then it comes back and they're like, I wouldn't say it's shame, but it's almost like, because they go, these are fine, you're fine. And you think, so it's me.
Yeah.
So you end up, and then I spoke to, I think she was a psychiatrist. It was only on the phone. I never went in person, and that was just quick phone calls, and it was more just a sort of follow up, because I spoke to the cardiologist, and they were just like, you're fine.
Yeah.
And then spoke to then sort of spoke through the GP, because told her what was going on. And then, I spoke to someone about that, and that's when sort of the breathing exercises came in, and, you have to try and manage it.
Yeah. Where have you got to today with it, do you think? You think you're feeling way better about it, and you've got these procedures in place as to when something like that happens again, you know how to deal with it?
Yeah, recognise them.
Yeah.
There's things you can do. I think the main issue is when they become regular.
Yeah.
So if they come out, they're going to come out of the blue sometimes. It's going to happen.
Yeah.
I think last one we were on the way back from Devon. I was with Millie in the car, and we got stuck in traffic around Glastonbury Festival.
Oh, okay.
It was quite. We were listening to a podcast about Charlie Bronson.
Yeah.
Not that set me off, but
Yeah.
within this podcast, they had a little game going. And they said, "Oh, guess how many times he's been to prison, or changed prison." Sorry, and every time he changed prison, they dung a bell.
Yeah.
And I don't know, for some reason, it just became quite regular.
trigger,
And
yeah.
that kind of got me. I was like,
wow.
I was stuck in traffic, which is something already, and I could feel myself. And then Millie, I don't even vocalize it to her then. She just looked at me and said, "Are you all right?" And then turned the podcast off.
It's that fucking bell.
Yeah. I was like, yeah. And, but yeah, it wasn't fully blown, but it's one of the times that they do happen. Is, I wouldn't say you're trapped, but you feel like, it's like, in close space. Whatever.
Yeah. It's quite nice that Millie's there to recognise when you're not feeling at your best. She can kind of pull you out of that.
I
Or
mean,
at least,
I think
realise
when it started around that time, I was hiding it from her as well. I don't, it's hard to explain why you do that, but you just do. It's, it's whether there's embarrassment or, any sort of shame alongside with it, or whatever stigma there is.
It's also really fucking hard to explain. I remember 'cause when I explained to Dan about I can't stop thinking about breathing, and I said, I know that sounds fucking bizarre, but I don't know how else to explain it. And you're there like, okay, mate, well, I'll see you tomorrow. Do you want to go home?
Yeah. It's not always easy to explain what's going on. Most of my conversations started when it initially started, so it would have been with my parents or with Millie, was like, something's wrong.
Yeah.
Would be the start of it, and then you'd have to try and explain what's going on.
It's nice to know that you called up the number, you called up the 101, you got some help through a psychiatrist on the phone, and you had these kind of conversations with professionals in that way. I think knowing you've got support there, and also like having a nice network around you, like your mum and Millie, is important.
That'd be the suggestion for anyone. Like it's important to be able to, hopefully it doesn't happen. If any one of my friends rung me and had something like this going on, then you want to be there to help them.
Yeah.
And then also, I would suggest if anyone's going through that sort of thing, like just to lean on whoever's there. So I think part of that has to be professional help.
Yeah.
Which is obviously NHS is amazing. Use it, and then the other part of that is talk to your friends, talk to your family, talk to your partner, whatever, and that usually helps you get through.
Yeah. I find accountability is one of the most important factors, I think, for us as friends as well as business partners. But when I've spoken about issues I've had, just by bringing it up and talking to Ben about it, he's then like, are you going to book a doctor's appointment for that? And like him kind of holding me accountable for like, because the other day I literally came into the office and I was like, yeah, I'm pretty sure I've got a lump on my ball. And then I knew as soon as I aired that, Ben was like, are you going to book a fucking doctor's appointment? And I was like, I'm sure it'll be fine, mate. Like, it's all good. It's all good. And then I did book one, and I went through the procedures of going to the doctors and getting it checked out, and it's all good. But prior to that, I would have just been like, I don't know, I'm a man, I'm stoic, and I can get through this. I'm healthy. But man, like, you need to have those friends, and also inside your own head, you need to be looking after yourself better.
Yeah. It would have been really bad for business if we lost Dan, that's all. So that's kind of what I was chasing.
It was entirely financial.
Yeah.
So I've got a mortgage to pay.
Yeah. I need you for the next 3 years at least, mate.
Yeah.
What a time. But what about the future for hockey for you?
I'm still playing. I've done 10 years. You start thinking about retirement in a sense. And then
You had your testimonial game.
Yeah, so I don't know if that's something that happens in every sport, but in hockey it's common. If you play 10 years for the same club, they have a game to celebrate your time with them.
That's sick.
You usually, you sell tickets, jerseys and things, and all the proceeds go to you.
Oh, wow.
So it can be, it was a really good day, really enjoyable, helped pay for the wedding a bit.
That's awesome, man.
But yeah, it's, hockey's kind of... it's kind of being aware that the end is coming at some point, and then just sort of trying to manage how that's going to happen. But I still love playing, and it's it's part of a big part of my life up to this point. And then it's going to be weird to sort of adapt to it not being there anymore.
Yeah, because you're going to need an outlet of sorts, I suppose, aren't you, to replace it with?
Yeah, I suppose so. I mean, I found I kind of changed career during COVID. I stuck at my job that was to support hockey for way too long.
Yeah.
And then COVID kind of gave me the kick up the arse I needed. And I found a job now doing sort of training to be a carpenter at the moment, and I love doing it. So that makes me feel a little bit more comfortable that the end's coming. I think if I was still working in my old job and playing hockey, I'd be like, oh my God, what are you going to do? This
is life, yeah.
But yeah, and that, I think part of you thinks as well, it's nice that you're going to be able to spend more time with people, and it's the big commitment will end eventually. And I don't want to make that sound like, oh, you can't wait to not do it anymore, because I've loved every minute of it, and I still do. And but yeah, that will come at a certain point. I will be moving on, I suppose.
We briefly talked about you becoming a carpenter. Our mutual friend is Will Harding.
How long have we got?
Have you got any good stories about Will? Just to finish off this podcast.
What, that I can tell here?
Yeah, that's the caveat, isn't it?
Oh, the only thing I don't know. The main thing about Will, one thing is he's an amazing human being and a friend. We talked about having friends that you can lean on.
Yeah.
Will is unbelievable. Yeah. Basically, like if you needed anything, Will would.
He'd do it for you.
Yeah. Like he'd be there. And but then on him, well, one thing is he only sweats around his eyes, which is strange. and I think once you notice it, it can't be unseen. So it's particularly when he's drunk or eating a stodgy meal that normally gets him going.
I'm gonna have to notice that now.
Yeah. And then the only other thing is he always wears a hat. So when you're drinking with him, so the hat starts off kind of here, and then you can sort of tell how many beers Will's had because it slowly just moves around there. I don't know what it is because I never see him touching the hat. He's not moving the hat. The hat just sort of goes. Ooh.
It's this eye sweat that's just pushing it up.
maybe it's kind of under eye.
Yeah, that's weird.
But he's one thing I've got to say is Will and Benny, who plays for the Wildcats as well. I reached out to Will to try and think, maybe you can help me out, get this job in carpentry. He did. Unbelievably supportive, unbelievable friend, and the sort of people you want to surround yourself with. If you're whatever you're dealing with, because you need people like that in your life, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
My favourite thing about Will is he's just such a fucking good storyteller. He's so captivating when he tells stories.
Has he told you like the Ed the Head jokes?
The head joke? I don't know.
Ed the Head.
No.
All right, tee him up next time you see him.
Okay.
It's good.
I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah,
he's just so captivating, isn't he, when he speaks?
He can hold court. That's for sure.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it.
Nice. Well, thanks so much, Stevie, for coming on. It's good that we finally got you in the studio.
Yeah, we talked about it for a while.
But yeah, I'm glad we finally done it. I'm looking forward to more podcasts in the future. Maybe we can bring Will on, and you and Will can just jest in the corner.
Yeah, maybe. I didn't see what Will could. I don't know what you want to talk about. We could talk about.
We just let Will just give him and let him
Will
run.
would be nuts on the podcast.
It'd be a good time.
Yeah,
for sure.
Sweet.